Hi, everybody. With you with our new skill of the week. And this is about stress management. Something that you probably didn't think we would cover, but this is also a really important part of your life in and out of school because there will be times that you become overwhelmed, frustrated, and how we manage that will help us um, become, more productive and happier. Essentially, that's really important. So there's many things that might cause us frustration or anxiety or stress, whether that's relationships with teachers, whether that's relationships with your peers or other social situations, relationships with parents. Maybe it's school itself, some class. Maybe it's some assignment specifically. Maybe you'll become frustrated with yourself when you've done something but forgotten to turn it in. So, how we kind of manage these times of stress, anxiety, or frustration is really important because when we feel kind of overwhelmed, it's really hard. Our brain feels like it's in pieces. How can we begin? How do we do anything? We're spending so much time being frustrated that it's difficult to move forward. So if we can kind of readjust, if we can set a new mindset, we may have new results. Perhaps this is something that you do really well already, and I'd like to hear from you about that throughout today's lesson. If this is something that you think is an area of growth for you, hopefully this helps. So, coping strategies, coping mechanisms you may have heard before. I want you to consider what is something that has caused you stress or frustration recently. This does not need to be something major, it can be something that um, was just even momentarily, or like maybe it put you off for the day. So, kind of consider that. What is something that has caused you stress or frustration recently? And then, how did you cope or how did you deal with it? What did you do to address the frustration? Is what that's asking. What was the result? And was that helpful or not? So, what coping strategies are skills that people use to help them manage the stress, frustration, conflict, or difficult emotions that come up. It's really a way of helping us solve problems for ourselves. Fact of the matter is, you can have both negative or unhelpful coping strategies or positive or helpful coping strategies. However, we address our stress, frustration, anxiety can be helpful, hopefully, or it may be something that's actually unhelpful. So you think about that. Avoidance. The idea of doing that really makes me anxious, so I'm just going to not do it or procrastinate. Reality is the task doesn't go away. Sometimes it's denial. Well, you know, it really isn't that bad, or maybe I can, not do it. Mm, And that's kind of related to blaming others. Like when we're in denial of taking ownership over something, we might blame others. Well, this is so and so's fault. Well, if they had just done this, becoming angry is really not helpful either. Putting that emotion outward towards others, negative self talk. Um, "Ugh, I'm going to be bad at this forever, or my friend's never going to make up with me, or something along those lines, something that's kind of like absolute, that is really a negative way to talk to yourself. And then self sabotage, which is like where you think the outcome already. You think the net outcome will be bad of doing something. So you don't do it. And then guess what? Because you didn't do it, the outcome was bad. So it's like a self fulfilling prophecy. So you kind of sabotage yourself. You don't even give yourself the opportunity to do well with it. On the right hand side, there's positive or helpful coping strategies. And I've broken these down to emotion based coping and problem based coping. I'm sorry. Yes, emotion based coping and problem focused coping. So here's a little image here that kind of gives you an idea of what these two categories of helpful coping skills or strategies have. So we've got exercise or giving yourself a pep talk, kind of the opposite of that negative self talk, um, meditating, asking for support. Oh my goodness, create a to do list. How about that? So, emotion based coping is a type of stress management that attempts to reduce the negative emotional responses associated with stress. So, these negative emotions like embarrassment, fear, anxiety, depression or like overexcitement, that associated with anxiety sometimes and frustration are reduced by removing or removed by the individual by various coping methods. So it's ways where you're trying to manage your emotions associated with this. So this is really helpful when things are out of your control, right? So maybe you've lost a loved one or some sort of grief or some sort of social conflict. In which you maybe you're going through a breakup. Some of these emotion based strategies can be really helpful for you. Problem based coping, on the other hand, addresses stress in practical ways. So it's about like actively doing something to alleviate or eliminate the stress. So you're thinking about the problem or the stressful situation that is causing the stress and addressing it. What can I do to minimize it? And then that, as a result, reduces the stress. So, this can be really helpful when you do have control over the situation. Control of the situation, like something associated with school. Well, you might not be able to move the test date, for example, but you can control how you study for the test. You can control if you ask for extended time on the test. So there are things that you can do within that capacity. So there are areas in which you do have control over the situation. So here's some emotion-based strategies. Exercise. Endorphins are really good for us. Positive self-talk, giving yourself that pep talk, telling yourself positive things. Relaxation apps, listening to music, crafts, drawing, or other favorite activities if you like to sew or if you like to sing. Um, Listing things you're thankful for. That's a quick one and can be kind of nourishing in terms of, okay, things may not be so bad. Animals, playing with your pet, if you have one, is also a nice one. Spending time in nature, going outside, going for a walk in the park, or just kind of like rolling out the blanket in the park and relaxing, or writing in a journal. Now, these emotion based strategies aren't great if it's like, well, I have a homework assignment that I'm really frustrated with, so I'm going to go write in a journal. That doesn't really address the problem, right? Because then you've written in your journal about your frustration, but you still have to do the homework. So you have to kind of think of what kind of problem it is and how to solve it, what's most appropriate. Problem based coping strategies are things that we talk a lot about in this class, like time management, asking for help or support, creating a to do list, and just generally problem solving. I have this problem. What are ways that I think I can solve it? So these are maybe things that um, come up more in school. This is not to say these emotion based coping strategies aren't useful, because if you're having a stressful time with a peer or with a friend and you're frustrated by it, that's taking up a lot of your mind space, and it can kind of prevent you from doing the work. So then here that might be a appropriate strategy. But it's not about the work itself, it's more that this other thing is distracting me from the problem. If it's like a work related problem or it's a kind of task related problem, this can be helpful. So here's two scenarios. You're in an argument with a friend. They won't return your texts. You think they are ignoring you. How have you handled this in the past? How has it worked out for you? What's another strategy you could use? You have a project due in a week. You really don't like the class. You're frustrated by the idea of the project. Then you go to your next class, another teacher assigns an essay. How have you handled this in the past? How has it worked out for you? And what's another strategy you could use? So it's one thing to kind of have these scenarios presented and think about it when you're in a calm space and you're able to think rationally, right? But in real life, in real time, how do we actually address these situations? And that's what we're going to work on this week for the skill of the week. So, the skill of the week in action this week has these three instructions for you. So, when you're feeling stressed, overwhelmed, frustrated, or anxious this week, select one of the following coping strategies based on the problem, okay, that you're experiencing. This does not need to be like a huge problem you're having. It can be like, I'm frustrated. This is annoying. This does not need to be like a crisis level frustration that I'm asking you to deal with. Not at all. So here are some of the strategies. And for some of these, I've put some resources in to help guide you. I think we all know how to exercise, even if it's just going for a walk. And then these three reflection questions. What was the source of the stress? You don't need to go into detail if you don't want to. You can just tell me it was a friend, it was an assignment, whatever. What strategy did you select and why? And were you able to reduce your stress at all and explain? Okay, I think that's it. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys.